Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Renegade Immortal episode number 198 based on novel. So let's start. In planet Yunxia, Wang Lin was sitting in a lotus position and his eyes were shining. The power of the underworld river was covering both sections of the bone. At this moment, the two sections of bone were moving as if they were alive. Following a burst of golden light, the trembling became more violent. It wasn't only one part, but the entire bone was trembling. It was as if a big hand was holding someone's spine and shaking it violently, thus causing their whole body to tremble. The moongazer serpent was like this right now. The entire planet began to tremble violently. The area around Wang Lin was shaking violently, but his body seemed to be rooted in place and remained motionless. Great pain spread across this giant moongazer serpent, but due to the large amount of celestial ascension fruits, the pain was dulled greatly. Also, through some strange means, this pain was converted into an intense sense of excitement. Bursts of red mist came out of the countless tentacles covering the planet. The tentacles trembled violently and muffled roars seemed to come from the planet. All of the tentacles on the surface extended like crazy, and their lengths increased several-fold from their original 1,000 feet. If one looked at planet Yunxia from space, it would look like a giant sea urchin. Deep inside planet Yunxia, Wang Lin's eyes shined even more. Endless suction force came from his arms and spread across the two sections of the bone. The suction force was like a knife separating the bone from the moongazer serpent's body. During this process, this giant moongazer serpent shook even more violently. Countless cracks appeared on the surface of the planet and the tentacles extended even farther. At the same time, a large amount of dirt fell off the moongazer serpent. If one saw this from the sky, they would see a large amount of dirt floating off the planet and into space. However, if one looked from space, they would see countless land masses coming off from planet Yunxia and slowly floating away. It was like an egg with its shell rapidly cracking and falling off. An ancient aura slowly came from inside the planet as the dirt flew off. It was as if a fierce beast that had been sleeping for countless years was gradually awakening. The vibration became more and more intense, and more red mist started coming from the tentacles. The mixture of the red mist and the fog outside seemed to form a dense cocoon. In planet Yunxia, Wang Lin's eyes shined even brighter. The earth trembled even more violently before, and a thick sense of crisis came at him from all directions. Wang Lin suddenly stood up and moved as fast as light. Right now his eyes contained the might of thunder. He instantly arrived on the left section of the bone. Both of his hands grabbed onto the bone and he shouted, "Rise!" This roar was like a rumbling thunder that spat out all of Wang Lin's energy in exchange for great power. Countless veins on his arms bulged, and there were even flashes of runes that appeared from the cycling of his celestial spiritual energy. Both of his hands were gripping the left section of the bone tightly. His eyes revealed a trace of madness, but deep within this madness there was an extraordinary sense of calmness. "Rise for me!" Wang Lin shouted again and he pulled with his hands again. The earth shook even more violently and painful roars came through the earth. However, due to the power of the celestial ascension fruits, the giant moongazer serpent wasn't able to determine what this feeling was. The earth shook even more violently, and Wang Lin's body tensed up and he pulled once more. He managed to make this half of the bone move 3 inches. As long as it could be moved, even 1 inch was important. Wang Lin activated all of the celestial spiritual energy in his body without hesitation and pulled on the bone. Endless rumbles came from the earth as the bone that was countless kilometers long was slowly dragged out by Wang Lin. 7 inches, 10 inches, 3 feet, 6 feet, 10 feet, 100 feet. The sound of friction was enough to shake one's soul. Wang Lin began to pull this half of the bone faster and faster. Wang Lin's face was ferocious and the celestial spiritual energy in his body was surging like crazy. If he hadn't reached the late stage of ascendant, his body might not have been able to bear using celestial spiritual energy like this. Every time the celestial spiritual energy cycled once, Wang Lin's strength would increase greatly. Time was of the essence, and the danger increased 1-fold every second he spent here. Wang Lin's eyes were blood red as he let out another roar. His strength reached its peak. There was a loud rumble as Wang Lin rushed toward the surface with this section of the bone. The celestial guard immediately passed by Wang Lin and charged toward the other section of bone. In comparison, the celestial guard that was at the illusory yin stage and cultivated a method similar to the ancient gods was much stronger than Wang Lin. It arrived next to the bone in a flash and grabbed it with both hands. When the celestial guard pulled the other section of the bone, the earth trembled even more violently. The rumbling sounded like countless bolts of thunder descending. As the celestial guard held the bone, its body glowed gold with a hint of red. It dragged the bone and followed closely after Wang Lin. Wang Lin and the celestial guard dragged one section of the bone each as they quickly broke through all the earth before them and headed toward the surface. Their speed was too fast, as Wang Lin was using all his speed without any hesitation. At first he wasn't fast, but once he gained momentum, he became faster and faster. The earth trembled and the moongazer serpent roared even louder. The tentacles released more red mist, and under the stimulation of this intense pain, the moongazer serpent rapidly transformed into its third form. However, thanks to the celestial ascension fruits, the transformation process became a lot slower and the moongazer serpent was unable to tell where the intense pain was coming from. After all, its body was too big. Also, it was only gradually awakening, so it was still in a drowsy state. This allowed the celestial ascension fruits to be even more effective. As the earth rumbled, Wang Lin charged out. The moment he charged out, the madness in his eyes was even more intense. He mercilessly pulled the bone out from underground. The loud sound made the earth tremble even more, and the sound of the bone grinding against the earth was enough to give people headaches. This half section of bone was simply too big and stretched for endless kilometers like a mountain range. From a distance, it looked like a giant, golden, fire dragon. This object was too big to be put into the bag of holding, so Wang Lin had to drag the bone as he charged toward the sky. His figure was too insignificant compared to this giant bone. If one didn't look closely, they wouldn't even see him. Just at this moment, the earth rumbled once more and the celestial guard charged out. It was carrying the other half of the bone and followed closely after Wang Lin. Charge! Wang Lin's eyes were bloodshot and the cycle of celestial spiritual energy in his body was already beyond his limit. Some of the celestial spiritual energy was leaking out of his body, causing him massive pain. However, compared to being able to obtain the moongazer serpent's bone, this pain was worth it. Wang Lin knew that he had to leave quickly, because if he was a bit slower, everything would be ruined and he could even lose his life here. He didn't believe the moongazer serpent would have any thoughts of letting the creature that took its bone escape. Once he was devoured, he would without a doubt die. Although the tentacles wanted to wrap around them, due to the effect of the celestial ascension fruits, their movements were slower. However, the bone was simply too big, so even though the tentacles were slower, many of them still wrapped around the bone. Wang Lin slapped his bag of holding without any hesitation and took out the restriction flag. His eyes revealed a sign of heartbreak, but this was not the time to worry about it. He formed a seal and pointed at the restriction flag. This flag suddenly trembled and seemed to let out a sad cry. After all, it had been with Wang Lin for many years, and more than 900 years of refining it had caused a hint of intelligence to form. The sad cry revealed a trace of decisiveness. The restriction flag collapsed and the countless restrictions fused together into a black meteor. There seemed to be a flame burning inside it as it crashed down on the tentacles wrapped around the bone. The self-destruction of the restriction flag was exchanged for a powerful force. At this moment, a huge restriction appeared, and this restriction contained a spirit. This spirit was formed due to Wang Lin, and it also extinguished for Wang Lin. Because this huge restriction carried a spirit, it released endless power. When it fell on the tentacles, it caused them to instantly slow down. The moongazer serpent was simply too powerful. Even the self-destruction of the restriction flag couldn't cut off the tentacles, it could only delay the tentacles for a moment. Wang Lin secretly sighed, but he mercilessly pulled without any hesitation. The entangled bone was pulled up and Wang Lin charged toward the fog in the sky while carrying the bone. As for the section of bone carried by the celestial guard, it was also entangled. However, with the destruction of the restriction flag, it was also pulled free, and the guard rushed after Wang Lin. As long as they could pass through this layer of fog, they would be in endless space. However, just at this moment, the trembling in the earth reached a peak and a huge gap appeared. It was like a huge mouth, and a roar that shook the heavens and earth came out from this huge mouth. Wang Lin's body trembled and all the celestial spiritual energy in his body collapsed. His face filled with pain and he coughed out a mouthful of blood. Even the celestial guard's body trembled, and the golden light around its body dissipated a bit. Wang Lin clenched his teeth. He ignored the aura of the giant mouth as he charged out once more toward the dense fog. However, the crack on the ground rose like crazy. At this moment, the earth began to constantly rise and entire planet began to rumble. Large amounts of land collapsed and flew off into space. This scene was almost exactly the same as when the original body caused a planet to collapse. However, that planet collapsed from the inside, and the explosion was extremely powerful. If low-level cultivators were too close, they would have no chance of surviving. However, planet Yunxia was slightly different. Although it was also collapsing, there was no destructive force. It was more the moongazer serpent waking up and shaking off the debris that had gathered on its body over the years. The constantly rising earth was only an illusion, as the so-called earth was merely the moongazer serpent's body. The rise of the earth was just the moongazer serpent turning around and raising its head. The giant crack instantly closed in, and its speed was unimaginable. Wang Lin's eyes became cold. The power of the celestial ascension fruits was still there, or else there would be no way for him to escape. As long as he could stop the moongazer serpent for a moment, he could charge through the fog and enter space. Wang Lin clenched his teeth and was about to slap his bag of holding when his eyes suddenly narrowed. At this moment, he felt a fluctuation he was very familiar with as the huge mouth approached him. That was the fluctuation from the 7-star sword formation. He withdrew his right hand from the bag and formed a seal. He then pointed forward and shouted, "Sword formation, spin!" His voice carried power as it charged out like a bolt of thunder toward the 7-star sword formation inside the huge mouth. The 7-star sword formation rapidly spun and gave off endless sword energy as it attacked like crazy from the inside. However, these attacks were really insignificant to the moongazer serpent and weren't able to stop it for even half a second. Seeing the mouth coming closer and closer, Wang Lin's eyes shined brightly and he shouted, "Rat sword, explode!" A muffled sound came from the mouth and then a roar came from inside. The mouth moved even faster and was within 1,000 feet of Wang Lin. Wang Lin's speed was very fast, and he and the celestial guard had now entered the dense fog. However, this dense fog rapidly dissipated as the mouth closed in. It disappeared without a trance in the blink of an eye. After countless years, this was the first time the dense fog around the serpent had disappeared. Pig, sheep, monkey, ox, tiger, and hare all explode. Wang Lin's eyes were filled with madness. Rumble, 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 rumble. Countless explosions echoed within the moongazer serpent. Not only did the swords explode, the evil spirits that reside within them also exploded. At this moment, a powerful destructive force formed as the 7-star sword formation launched its most powerful attack at the moongazer serpent. However, the moongazer serpent was so strong that the explosion of the 7-star sword formation had no effect on it. It merely slowed it for a moment due to the impact of the explosion. However, what Wang Lin wanted was for it to slow down. He and the celestial guard quickly charged out. The stars were right before their eyes. The huge mouth quickly recovered. The power of the celestial ascension fruit still made it unsure where this powerful sense of pain and excitement was coming from. However, in its confused state after awakening, it felt the two creatures that were trying to escape were carrying something familiar. It subconsciously chased to try to keep those two familiar things here. When it saw the other two move even faster and faster, it let out a sound that hadn't been heard in countless years. Although this sound had no practical meaning, it was extremely strange. The moment this sound appeared, Wang Lin's scalp immediately went numb. This was the language of the ancient god. Wang Lin gasped. The memories from Tu Sai don't show that moongazer serpents can speak the language of the ancient gods. What kind of moongazer serpent is this? The moment the words of the ancient gods echoed, the sky changed. Wang Lin suddenly had a feeling that the thing chasing him was no longer a moongazer serpent, but an adult ancient god. The ancient god's language echoed, and it was very ancient. However, what it brought Wang Lin was the sense that a life and death crisis was about to happen. Cracks appeared in the space around this area as if it was about to collapse. This made Wang Lin almost lose his wit. He knew this spell. This was a shattering spell that only an 8-star ancient god could use. It could shatter everything in sight and cause everything in its range to collapse into dust. The sense of life and death he was feeling had never been so strong. Wang Lin turned around and let out a loud yet strange roar. What he spoke was also the language of the ancient gods, which he inherited from Tu Sai. The earth suddenly paused and the huge mouth closed slightly. At the same time, 2 more cracks appeared, revealing a pair of cold eyes. This gaze fell on Wang Lin, and it revealed a trace of coldness and confusion. Due to the moongazer serpent being interrupted, the collapse of the space around them stopped. Wang Lin fled without hesitation and the celestial guard never stopped. Just at this moment, a thin figure charged out from the depths of the crack with a sense of fear and excitement. He was Greed. The huge change to the moongazer serpent caused the absorption and excretion location in the moongazer serpent to change violently, resulting in an opening. Greed used this opening to escape, and of course he wouldn't leave behind the huge furnace. After charging out of that place, Greed noticed how terrifying the moongazer serpent was. He didn't hesitate to use the huge furnace to help him fly up. When he looked, he saw the giant crack and even the stars outside of it. Excitement that hadn't appeared in 100 years surged through his body. He even felt tears appear in his eyes. These days of living not like a human or a ghost was finally about to end. He recalled the past 100 years. He had spent almost all that time in the beast's excretion location. To him this was a disgrace. In particular, that foul stench was something he could never forget. Even though the stench was gone, he felt like he could still smell it. Greed vowed that once he escaped, he would never take half a step into the northern domain of the All-Heaven star system. In the future, when he goes treasure hunting again, he must be careful, and more careful. Seeing the crack come closer and closer, Greed's excitement had reached its peak. Old man Greed is finally going to be free. At this moment, the confusion in the moongazer serpent's eyes suddenly disappeared and the ancient god's language echoed once more. Wang Lin's entire body felt cold. In this moment of life and death, he couldn't hesitate anymore. He sent out a command that caused the celestial guard to slow down and throw the half of the bone it was carrying down at the moongazer serpent. "I'll give you back half." Half of the bone was like a huge mountain, so it created a harsh, whistling sound as it fell down through the atmosphere. This caused the huge mouth to pause once more. The collapse of the surrounding space stopped once more. The moongazer serpent stared at the rapidly falling mountain, and its eyes revealed confusion once more. This thing was very familiar, but it couldn't remember what it was. However, it subconsciously opened its mouth and swallowed the mountain range. Greed's excitement was so strong that it seemed like he had devoured countless celestial ascension fruits. He was moving very fast as he got closer and closer to the crack. He even wanted to roar loudly. The almost 100 years of misery was finally about to end. He couldn't teleport inside the moongazer serpent, he already knew this. The moment he tried to teleport, he would be obstructed by a strange force which would cause his speed to become even slower. However, just at this moment when Greed was very close to the crack, a giant shadow suddenly eclipsed over the crack. Greed was startled and he rubbed his eyes. He even suspected that he was hallucinating. What was this giant shadow? After being covered in the stench inside the moongazer serpent for so long, even Greed's mind was a bit dull. This is a mountain. Greed's eyes revealed despair and his excitement instantly dissipated. Anyone else who suddenly felt these powerful contradicting feelings would feel like they were about to collapse. However, Greed was a powerful cultivator. He let out a roar as he charged forward and entered his furnace. Then the furnace smashed toward the side. The mountain whisked by and the edge of the mountain rubbed against the furnace, causing a series of sparks. The vibrations caused Greed, who was inside, to keep coughing up blood. Damn! After barely avoiding the mountain, Greed appeared from the furnace completely pale. He didn't have full control of the furnace, so if he was inside it for too long, he would be refined by the terrifying aura within it. After swallowing half the mountain, the confusion in the Moongazer serpent became even stronger. This feeling was very familiar, it was about to remember. Borrowing the moment of hesitation from the Moongazer serpent, Wang Lin commanded the celestial guard to help carry the bone. Both of them quickly fled toward the stars. The confusion in the Moongazer serpent gradually dissipated and the power of the celestial ascension fruits was about to disappear. It now remembered that this mountain wasn't any ordinary thing, it was formed from its own bones. As the celestial ascension fruit's effect disappeared, the Moongazer serpent was able to detect the location of the pain. It was from where its bones should have been. A storm suddenly appeared. After the celestial ascension fruit's effect disappeared, the pain that was hidden by the fruits revealed itself. This caused the Moongazer serpent's rage to completely explode. In the memories of ancient god Tu Sai, there was one line he used to describe the Moongazer serpents. If the heavens have a spirit, then the ancient god has a Moongazer. The spirit can be considered a soul. In short, the first half of the sentence states that the heavens is alive. It has its own existence or a sense of spirit that normal creatures can't detect. The second half is referring to the Moongazer serpent. Even ancient god Tu Sai didn't know how the Moongazer serpents came to be. It seemed to have already existed for a very long time. It was like the heavens and its spirit, both were elusive things that no one could explain. The Moongazer's wrath, the finger of an ancient god. This was the second description of the Moongazer serpent in ancient god Tu Sai's memories, and it was the one Wang Lin had the most profound impression of. Reading between the lines, it means that once a Moongazer serpent is angry and reaches its third form, it has the power of a finger of an ancient god. This power varies, but the finger of a 9-star ancient god is enough to collapse a cultivation planet. If it was an 1-star ancient god, it would be laughed at by a disciple. However, the giant Moongazer serpent before Wang Lin was not a joke. Wang Lin's whole body gave off a cold light when his and the celestial guard's speeds reached a limit as they carried the bone and escaped. He had tried to absorb it with the heaven-defying bead, but for some reason, it was very slow and couldn't be finished in a short period of time. At this moment, a loud rumble violently echoed across planet Yunxia. This sound was so loud that it would be an understatement to call it thunder. This angry roar echoed across the stars and could be heard far away. Wang Lin's eyelid twitched. He didn't turn around and quickly escaped. The Moongazer serpent wouldn't die if it lost its bone, it only needed time to grow another one. However, this bone was grown after countless years, so it was no wonder the Moongazer serpent was so angry. The Moongazer serpent's large body slowly stretched from its round shape from before. This caused the earth to tremble even more, and the land collapsed once more. This time the collapse was even more thorough. Countless large tentacles constantly extended and swayed around, and an unimaginable aura gradually spread out from its body. Greed's body came out from the huge furnace. However, it was a really bad time to come out, because it was when the Moongazer serpent was releasing its anger. When Greed looked at the not far away crack, his eyes turned red. He let out a roar and accelerated like crazy. He wanted to rush out. However, just at this moment, the crack slowly closed. Greed's eyes shed blood tears and he let out a miserable scream. No! The Moongazer serpent closed its mouth, and its huge body was filled with power. However, its actions were still slow and it still didn't have full control of itself. However, as the remaining celestial ascension fruit mist was purged from its system, it was gradually regaining control. Wang Lin carried the Moongazer serpent's bone with the celestial guard behind him. The moment they entered space, he slapped his bag of holding and the star compass appeared. He turned into a ray of silver light and flew off into the distance without turning back. The Moongazer serpent's cold gaze stared at the faraway Wang Lin. The huge tentacles on its body moved slightly and a powerful storm suddenly appeared. This storm was so powerful that it created a series of sonic booms. A powerful shockwave spread out in all directions, then the moongazer serpent moved. One almost couldn't tell it had moved, but its distance from Wang Lin was closed in an instant. At the same time, the moongazer serpent opened its mouth and spoke the language of the ancient gods. Wang Lin's scalp felt numb when he saw hundreds of smaller moongazer serpents charge out from its mouth. Greed was also inside its mouth. When he saw the stars, his excitement ignited once more. This feeling was too good, as it had been too long since he seen the stars. He was so excited that he couldn't speak. But he knew that he hadn't truly escaped. He instantly saw the star compass far away and recognized Wang Lin. Greed was suddenly enlightened and his eyes revealed hatred. However, he didn't dare to act carelessly. There were too many of these 1,000-feet-long fierce beasts around him, and he feared that his movements would attract them to him. Wang Lin sucked in a breath of cold air. Without any hesitation, he touched his bag of holding and took out the celestial wine. He clenched his teeth and drank a mouthful, leaving only 2 drops. In an instant, endless celestial spiritual energy exploded in his body. This celestial energy was dense and rich. After all, this was something that belonged to a true celestial. Enduring the powerful pain and sense of passing out, Wang Lin raised his right hand. He mercilessly pointed at those moongazer serpents and shouted, "Stop!" The celestial spiritual energy that was about to explode from his body suddenly surged out from his finger. It turned into an infinite force that surrounded the heavens and earth. One word seemed to have stopped the heavens and earth from moving. Normally, Wang Lin wouldn't be able to do this. He was relying on the celestial wine. Without the celestial wine, it was impossible for him to use the stop spell to this degree. Borrowing this moment, Wang Lin charged out without any hesitation. He moved very quickly and used those escape spells he learned from the old man from the demon spirit land. Wang Lin had stopped the small moongazer serpents, but the stop spell had no effect on the large moongazer serpent that formed planet Yunxia. It rushed out and the fierce impact it caused allowed the smaller moongazer serpents to regain their freedom. However, Greed's luck was really bad. He was also stopped and recovered slightly slower. As the moongazer serpent charged out, he fell into its mouth once more. Greed felt his vision go black, and at the next moment, he found he was actually back inside the crack once more. Feeling desperate, Greed's eyes revealed madness. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a large mouth of blood onto the huge furnace. The furnace gave off an ancient aura and a ripple spread out. Greed's eyes flashed and he immediately changed positions with the fastest small moongazer serpent. His expression was extremely pale as he coughed out another mouthful of blood. He then pointed at Wang Lin and shouted, "Wang Lin, don't you dare leave." Wang Lin had long noticed Greed. He didn't even turn his head as he pointed behind himself and the storm-like celestial spiritual energy in his body surged out. "Stop!" Greed was about to use the furnace's ability once more to switch himself and Wang Lin. However, the stop spell descended and his body froze. The moongazer serpent's gaze suddenly fell on Greed, and its eyes shined brightly. It sensed an aura that made it feel very comfortable coming from the huge furnace. Back then, when the moongazer serpent hadn't awakened, the reason it didn't kill Greed was because of this furnace. However, it wasn't awake back then, so it subconsciously sent Greed and the furnace toward its excretion spot. Although that was the moongazer serpent's excretion spot, it was also where the moongazer serpent absorbed thing. It subconsciously wanted to absorb the furnace, and this led to Greed's 100 years of suffering. At the moment Greed's body was frozen, the moongazer serpent quickly charged forth. Wang Lin's eyes revealed a strange light. He used this change to widen the distance once more. Greed only felt his vision go black. When he regained his senses, he had been swallowed once more and was at the edge of the crack. This constant rise and fall made Greed's face extremely bitter, and it made his hatred for Wang Lin even stronger. "It was all because of you." Greed mercilessly clenched his teeth, then his hand formed a seal and he pressed on the furnace. A milky white light came out from his head and imprinted on the furnace. Greed roared, "Even if I have to sacrifice my life force, I'll still escape from this place." The furnace absorbed greed's life force and immediately grew larger. In the blink of an eye, it started growing. An ancient aura constantly spread out as the furnace grew larger. The moongazer serpent let out roar. As the roar echoed, Wang Lin coughed out another mouthful of blood. He had already been seriously injured. As for the celestial guard, it also shook violently, and the golden light around it collapsed. Even the light in its eyes had turned bleak, but compared to Wang Lin, its injuries were rather light. As the furnace expanded, Wang Lin decisively rushed out. The mouth of the moongazer serpent was being propped open by the expanding furnace. This old man doesn't want this furnace. Greed's heart ached as he turned around and was going to dash away. However, just at this moment, the moongazer serpent spat out the giant furnace and its eyes revealed a mysterious light. Countless tentacles immediately extended and wrapped around the huge furnace. Other tentacles quickly rushed toward the closest target, Greed. Greed's expression was gloomy. He slapped his bag of holding and a screen suddenly appeared. His hand formed a seal and the force of mountain and river immediately appeared among the stars. While Wang Lin was escaping, his divine sense even had the hallucination that he was no longer among the stars but instead before the majestic mountains and river. Mountain and river painting. Wang Ling's star compass slowed down and his eyes showed greed as he looked at the screen. Wang Lin remembered Greed saying that he didn't find the mountain and river painting but found a screen with its projection. The moongazer serpent's eyes were still cold, and a strange rune appeared in its eyes. Wang Lin recognized this rune. It was the language of the ancient gods. As the rune flashed, a 1,000 feet long finger appeared before the moongazer serpent. This was only a finger, and its skin was extremely rough. However, it had a faint aura that was intoxicating. Although this finger was only an illusion, in Wang Lin's eyes, it was unimaginably real. The moongazer's wrath, the finger of an ancient god. Wang Lin's breathing was rough and his forehead was covered in sweat. His heart started pounding wildly. He finally knew the meaning of these words. This video will end here.